My name is Maya Rodriguez. I thought my cloud folder security was bulletproof. Instead, it became the perfect trap. I watched my boss build a $15 million client presentation using 7 deliberately sabotaged templates. Then I watched everything crumble from the conference room as he pitched impossible timelines, backwards budgets, and catastrophically wrong technical specs. This is the story of how I used cloud storage permissions, some creative template design, and a lot of patience to end a career that tried to bury mine. For 8 years, I've been the backbone of every successful marketing campaign at Pinnacle Creative Solutions. I'm 34 years old, divorced, and my performance reviews consistently rate me as exceptional contributor, while noting I need to develop a stronger leadership presence. That's corporate speak for she does all the work, but we can't picture her in the corner office. I've spent my career as a senior marketing strategist, the person who turns vague client dreams into executable campaigns. When Mercedes-Benz needed to rebrand their electric vehicle line, I created the entire go-to-market strategy in 3 weeks. When a tech startup's launch was hemorrhaging money, I rebuilt their positioning from scratch and saved their series of funding. When our biggest pharmaceutical client faced a PR crisis, I developed the crisis communication framework that became the industry standard. But here's the thing about being indispensable in the background. You watch other people present your strategies to boardrooms full of executives. You sit in meetings where your campaigns are discussed as someone else's innovative thinking. You get passed over for creative director positions while watching people who couldn't design a flyer get promoted because they understand the business side. For times in 8 years, I've applied for leadership roles. The feedback was always variations of the same theme. Maya is incredibly talented, but we need someone with more strategic vision. Strategic vision. As if the person who'd created their most successful campaigns lacked strategic thinking. Pinnacle Creative Solutions occupies 3 floors of a converted warehouse in Portland's Pearl District. We're the kind of agency that wins awards for campaigns that disrupt traditional thinking while charging Fortune 500 companies enough to fund small countries. The office screams creative authenticity, exposed brick, industrial lighting, a coffee bar that serves single-origin beans from farms you've never heard of. Conference rooms named after famous ad campaigns, meditation pods for creative centering, and a slide that no one over 25 has ever used. My office is on the 2nd floor, wedged between the accounts payable department and the supply room. No windows, but it's quiet, perfect for the deep strategic work that apparently everyone valued, but no one wanted to credit. Everything changed when we landed Quantum Dynamics as a client. They were an aerospace engineering firm pivoting to sustainable aviation technology, looking to rebrand their entire corporate identity and launch their revolutionary electric aircraft platform. The contract was worth $15 million over 2 years, the kind of account that makes agencies famous and careers. During the initial client meeting, our creative director Marcus Webb specifically mentioned my expertise. Maya will be instrumental in developing the strategic framework, he announced to Quantum C-Suite. Her background in technical marketing and sustainable technology positioning is exactly what this project needs. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe this might finally be my chance to lead a marquee project. I started sketching campaign architectures, building team structures, imagining myself presenting to aerospace executives about the future of sustainable flight. I should have known better. 2 weeks after we signed Quantum Dynamics, HR announced a strategic hire. They'd recruited a visionary creative leader from our biggest competitor, someone who would elevate our strategic capabilities and strengthen client relationships. The announcement email included a professional headshot of a man who looked like he'd been assembled by a corporate consulting firm's AI. Perfectly styled hair, confident smile, the kind of expensive casual clothing that screams, "I'm creative but also business savvy." His name was Derek Hamilton, and he was about to become my career's biggest obstacle. Derek arrived on a Monday morning like a hurricane in designer jeans. He was 29 years old, had a Northwestern MBA, and a portfolio that read like a greatest hits of advertising campaigns I'd actually researched and knew had been created by teams, not individuals. He'd supposedly spearheaded a viral campaign for Nike, revolutionized social media strategy for Apple, and somehow found time to give a keynote at Cannes about authentic brand storytelling in the digital age. The entire agency was buzzing before he'd even signed his employment paperwork. Marcus introduced him during our Monday morning all-hands meeting. Derek will be leading our quantum dynamics engagement, he announced while Derek stood there radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never having a campaign fail during launch week. He brings fresh perspective and proven experience with high-stakes B2B rebranding. Then, almost as an afterthought, Maya will be supporting all strategic development, research, and implementation. Supporting. That word again. The word that meant I'd build the foundation while Derek took credit for the architecture. Derek found me in my office that afternoon. He didn't knock. People like Derek never knock. "You must be Maya," he said, flashing that keynote speaker smile. "Marcus told me you're the strategic genius behind some impressive campaigns." The compliment felt rehearsed, like something from a leadership seminar about managing technical teams. He leaned against my doorframe, taking up space like he'd already claimed it. "I'm really excited to collaborate. I have some revolutionary ideas about the quantum project that I think will transform how aerospace companies think about consumer engagement." I smiled politely, already calculating how many late nights I'd spend fixing his revolutionary ideas when they crashed against the reality of aerospace industry regulations and technical specifications. It started with small requests. "Maya, could you pull together some competitive analysis on sustainable aviation marketing?" Then, "I need research on B2B decision-making patterns in the aerospace sector." "No, please. No, thank you. Just assumptions about my availability." By the second week, he was forwarding me client emails with single-word additions, handle, or thoughts. The breaking point came on a Thursday at 6:47 p.m. I was deep into developing positioning frameworks when Derek burst into my office. "I need access to your cloud folder," he said. Not asked, declared. "I'm building the initial strategy presentation for Quantum and need to review your template library." "Those templates are my working files," I replied carefully. "Many are in them, aren't client-ready. I'd be happy to share specific assets you need." He waved dismissively. "I know how to adapt raw materials. I just need broad access to see your full strategic approach. Email me the folder permissions." Then he was gone, leaving behind only expensive cologne and entitlement. I sat there staring at my screen for several minutes. 8 years of watching my strategies get repackaged and presented by people who couldn't explain the logic behind them. 8 years of being told I lacked leadership qualities while leaders claimed credit for my thinking. Something crystallized in that moment. Not anger. Anger was too hot, too impulsive. This was colder, more methodical. This was calculation. I opened my cloud storage dashboard and created a new folder. Strategic Templates, Master Library. Then I began building something special. Not lies exactly, that would be too obvious and potentially illegal. Instead, I crafted templates that looked professional and comprehensive, but contained subtle, catastrophic flaws. Strategic frameworks with backwards logic. Timeline templates with impossible dependencies. Budget models that would implode under scrutiny. Each template was a masterpiece of subtle sabotage, beautiful on the surface, poisonous underneath. The email to Derek was brief. Access granted to Strategic Templates folder. The master library should have everything you need for comprehensive strategy development. I hit send at exactly 7:15 p.m., then archived a copy to my personal accounts. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for Derek to spring it himself. Creating those sabotage templates was like composing a symphony of professional destruction. Each one had to be convincing enough to fool a casual review, but fundamentally flawed enough to explode when implemented. I spent my evenings after Derek left, usually around 6 p.m. sharp, perfecting my masterpieces. Template 1. Strategic Positioning Framework. This looked like a comprehensive brand positioning template with all the right sections. Market analysis, competitive landscape, value proposition architecture. But the logic flow was subtly inverted. Where a real framework would identify market gaps first, then build solutions. This template started with predetermined solutions and reverse-engineered market justification. It would lead to campaigns that solved problems customers didn't have while ignoring actual pain points. Template 2. Campaign Timeline Master Beautiful Gantt charts, professional milestone markers, resource allocation matrices, everything a project manager would love. Except the dependencies were deliberately scrambled. Creative development was scheduled before strategy approval. Media buying was set to begin before creative existed. Client approval phases overlapped with production deadlines. Following this timeline would guarantee chaos. Template 3. Budget planning model sophisticated Excel formulations, detailed cost breakdowns, contingency planning. It looked like the work of a financial genius. But I'd embedded calculation errors that compounded throughout the model. A $15 million project would appear to cost $8 million in the summary, while individual line items totaled $22 million. The discrepancies were buried deep enough that you'd need to understand cost accounting to spot them. Template 4. Client presentation structure. This was my personal masterpiece. A presentation framework that looked like it would create compelling client pitches, but the flow was designed for consumer products, not B2B services. It would have Derek presenting emotional brand benefits to aerospace engineers and technical specifications to marketing directors. The psychological persuasion architecture was completely backwards for the audience. Template 5. Competitive analysis matrix, professional-looking comparison charts and evaluation criteria that would impress any client. Except the weighting system was inverted. Minor features were scored as major differentiators while crucial capabilities were treated as nice-to-haves. Any strategy built on this analysis would position quantum dynamics in exactly the wrong market segments. Template 6. Creative Brief Generator, a template for developing creative briefs that looked comprehensive and strategic. But the target audience definitions were vague, the creative requirements contradicted each other, and the success metrics were impossible to measure. Any creative team following this brief would produce work that satisfied no one. Template 7. Implementation Roadmap, the crown jewel, a project implementation framework that looked sophisticated and thorough. But the sequencing was designed for simple product launches, not complex B2B rebranding initiatives. Following this roadmap would have teams working in silos, critical dependencies ignored, and client feedback loops scheduled after launch dates. Each template included my digital signature in the metadata, creation timestamps showing they'd been developed over months, and detailed version histories. But more importantly, I created parallel versions, the real templates I actually used, stored in a separate, secured folder with comprehensive documentation. I also implemented a simple monitoring system. Nothing sophisticated that would trigger IT security, just enough to track access patterns. A basic script that logged when files were opened, downloaded, or modified. Derek took the bait immediately. Within hours of getting access, he was downloading everything. My logs showed he'd accessed all 7 templates multiple times, renamed several files to remove my initials, and even tried editing a few to add his own stylistic touches. By the next morning, I watched him reference my sabotaged frameworks in the morning stand-up, explaining insights he'd developed overnight. I spent the weekend deep diving into strategic architecture, he announced, pointing to visualizations I'd created weeks ago. The patterns emerging from our positioning analysis are fascinating. Janet from account planning raised her hand. The competitive weighting seems unusual. Are micro-targeting capabilities really more important than safety certifications for aerospace clients? Derek's smile never wavered. That's exactly the kind of conventional thinking we need to challenge. Sometimes disruption means questioning fundamental assumptions. He clicked to the next slide, my intentionally flawed timeline. But look at this implementation velocity. We can compress traditional aerospace marketing cycles by 40%. I kept my expression neutral while documenting every false claim, every misrepresentation, every moment he claimed ownership of my sabotaged work. The beauty of a well-executed trap is that the victim commits themselves deeper with each interaction. Over the next 5 weeks, I became Derek's most reliable supporter, at least on the surface. When he needed research by 9 a.m., I had it ready by 8:30. When he demanded last-minute revisions for client calls, I delivered with enthusiasm. Every interaction was meticulously documented. Screenshots of Slack messages where Derek claimed discovery, just cracked the positioning challenge for quantum. Found some breakthrough insights in competitive analysis. Video recordings of team meetings where he presented my sabotaged frameworks. I've developed a revolutionary timeline compression methodology. Email threads where he forwarded my templates to quantum executives with his signature attached as lead strategic director. The most damning evidence came from Derek himself. He created a shared folder called DH_quantum_strategy, where he stored his work, my corrupted templates with metadata stripped, and his name added to headers. He didn't realize our system maintained version histories showing the original files copied from my cloud folder, complete with timestamps proving I'd created them months before he'd joined the company. While feeding Derek poison templates, I maintained a parallel workflow. I built the actual quantum dynamic strategy in a secured folder only I could access. The real analysis told a compelling story. Aerospace was ready for a sustainability revolution, but messaging had to balance environmental benefits with safety, reliability, and performance. B2B decision-makers in aviation prioritized risk mitigation over revolutionary change. Success required methodical education, not disruptive marketing. This was my insurance policy, the strategy quantum actually needed, waiting in the wings. Derek's confidence grew exponentially. He started excluding me from client calls, telling Marcus I was better utilized on deep research and development. He began speaking at industry conferences about his innovative approach to B2B aerospace marketing. He even submitted a case study proposal to the Marketing Excellence Awards featuring visualizations pulled directly from my Sabotaged templates. The access logs revealed the full extent of his dependence. Derek had downloaded my templates 67 times in 5 weeks. He'd modified them, reformatted them, even recreated some in new software, but the fundamental architecture remained my corrupted frameworks. Every presentation he built rested on foundations designed to collapse. 4 days before the big presentation, I overheard Derek on a call with Quantum CMO. "The strategic framework is revolutionary," he assured her. "I've personally validated every component. This approach will transform how aerospace companies engage with consumers." He was standing outside my office, voice carrying just enough to ensure I heard, a power play, letting me know he was taking full ownership. I opened my real strategy folder and reviewed the authentic analysis one final time. Grounded, achievable, brilliant in its practical sophistication. Everything quantum actually needed to succeed. Then I looked at what Derek would be presenting. Impossible timelines, backwards budgets, consumer psychology applied to B2B engineering decisions. The gap between his fiction and aerospace reality was unbridgeable. That evening, I forwarded myself every piece of evidence from my work computer to personal accounts. Access logs, email chains, version histories, screenshots, everything. Then I sent a comprehensive summary to my attorney with a note. "For your records, in case questions arise about intellectual property and professional ethics." On Wednesday, Derek sent a company-wide email, excited to present our groundbreaking quantum dynamic strategy to their executive team Friday. This represents Pinnacle's next evolution in strategic thinking. He CC'd Marcus, the board of directors, and even some industry contacts. He was all in, reputation staked on 7 templates of beautiful lies. I spent Thursday quietly preparing. I wore my best suit, the navy one I'd bought for job interviews but never worn to client meetings. I tested my laptop's presentation mode, ensuring the real strategy would display perfectly. I organized hard copies of documentation chronologically in a leather portfolio. Derek stopped by my office at 4:20 p.m. "You'll be at the quantum presentation tomorrow, right? In case they have implementation questions." His tone suggested attendance was mandatory, not optional. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. "I'll be right there taking notes." He nodded, satisfied. "Good. Though I doubt I'll need support. The strategy speaks for itself." "Yes," I thought, watching him walk away in his designer shoes. "Yes, it absolutely does." The week before the presentation, I discovered Derek had already shared the Sabotaged templates with Quantum's leadership team. He'd sent them a preview package with a note: "Advanced look at our revolutionary approach. Prepare to rethink everything you know about aerospace marketing." I learned this through Rebecca in account management, who forwarded me Quantum's response. Their CMO, Dr. Sarah Chen, had circulated Derek's materials internally with the comment: "Please review before Friday's presentation." Some of these timelines seem aggressive for aerospace regulations. Aggressive? If only she knew the timeline showed creative development completing before strategy approval, or that the budget model calculated $15 million projects costing $8 million while line items totaled $22 million. This revelation changed the stakes. This wasn't just about Derek anymore. Our client had corrupted strategic frameworks sitting in their executive inboxes, potentially influencing million-dollar decisions. The ethical weight was significant, but I'd committed to this path. The templates were clearly marked preliminary and not for distribution, labels Derek had removed before sharing. I spent the weekend perfecting the real strategy, making it unassailable. Every framework had source documentation. Every timeline included regulatory considerations. Every budget calculation was transparent and auditable. This wasn't just good work, it was exemplary. I also practiced my explanations, knowing I'd have one chance to establish credibility when the moment came. The most revealing discovery came Sunday evening while reviewing access logs one final time. Derek hadn't just stolen my templates, he'd attempted to alter the creation timestamps, trying to make it appear he'd developed them before accessing my folder. But he'd done it incompetently, leaving digital artifacts that screamed manipulation. It was like signing a forgery with the wrong century's ink. The specific evidence was damning. File modification logs showed original creation dates, then suspicious timestamp changes exactly matching Derek's folder access times. Metadata revealed unsuccessful attempts to remove my digital signature. Version histories displayed the progression from my original templates to his adapted versions. For someone supposedly expert in digital marketing, Derek had remarkably poor understanding of digital forensics. Sunday night brought an unexpected email from Marcus. "Maya, please bring all supporting documentation to tomorrow's presentation. Derek mentioned you have comprehensive backup materials." Derek was already building his escape route, ensuring I'd be there to blame when his strategy collapsed. "Perfect." I replied immediately. "Of course. I'll bring everything." And I would. Every real analysis, every accurate framework, every piece of evidence showing who created what and when. All loaded on my laptop, backed up on encrypted drives, and printed in presentation-quality binders. That night, sleep was impossible, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. Tomorrow, in a glass conference room overlooking the Willamette River, 8 years of invisibility would end. I set my alarm for 5 a.m., laid out my navy suit, and placed my portfolio by the door. Inside were 2 complete presentations, one documenting Derek's theft, and one showing what Quantum actually needed to succeed. Derek had no idea what was coming. Quantum Dynamics Conference Room was a temple to aerospace achievement, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Portland's skyline, walls lined with models of aircraft spanning a century of innovation, and a presentation system that probably cost more than my annual salary. 12 executives filed in, including Dr. Sarah Chen, the CMO whose questions would determine our fate, and Robert Morrison, Quantum CEO, a former Air Force pilot who'd built an aerospace empire through methodical precision. Derek arrived at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes early, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. He was all confident handshakes and practiced small talk, working the room like a politician at a fundraiser. I sat in the second row as instructed, laptop ready, watching him set up his presentation with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never had a campaign fail during launch week. Marcus and 3 other Pinnacle partners positioned themselves along the wall. The tension was palpable. $15 million tends to focus everyone's attention. Derek clicked through his opening slides with polished confidence: corporate overview, market opportunity analysis, all the standard frameworks that could safely impress without revealing the corruption underneath. Slide 1. Quantum's innovation history, safe territory, pulled from public sources. Slide 2, market opportunity, still generic enough to avoid exposing the flawed analysis. Slide 3, competitive landscape overview, broad strokes that looked strategic without committing to specifics. Slide 4, strategic objectives, vague enough to sound insightful while building toward the disaster. Then came Slide 5, timeline overview, the $15 million mistake. The moment the Gantt chart appeared, I saw Dr. Chen's eyebrows rise. The timeline showed creative development completing in week 6, while strategy approval was scheduled for week 8. In aerospace marketing, where every claim required legal and technical verification, this was like suggesting they build the airplane before designing the wings. Can you explain this sequencing? Dr. Chen asked, her voice professionally neutral but her engineering background clearly triggered. Derek's smile never wavered. Our accelerated methodology allows parallel development streams. This timeline represents next-generation project management. Next generation. Morrison leaned forward. We've been in aerospace for 40 years. Creative development before strategy approval violates every compliance protocol we have. Slide 6. Budget breakdown. The mathematical impossibility showcase. Dr. Chen pulled out her tablet, clearly cross-referencing Derek's numbers with internal data. Your summary shows $8.2 million total project cost, but individual line items total $22.4 million. Which number should we plan for? The summary reflects our innovative cost optimization, Derek replied smoothly, but I caught the slight tremor in his hand on the clicker. We've developed proprietary methods for reducing traditional agency overhead. Slide 7. Target audience analysis. The consumer psychology disaster. Now, even the junior executives were frowning. Derek was presenting emotional brand benefits to a room full of engineers and technical specifications to people who made purchasing decisions based on safety certifications and regulatory compliance. Mr. Hamilton, Morrison's voice could have cut steel. Are you seriously suggesting we market electric aircraft by appealing to customers' desire for authentic lifestyle expression? The data clearly shows. What data? Dr. Chen interrupted, pulling up something on her tablet. Our customer research shows 94% of purchasing decisions are based on performance metrics, safety records, and regulatory compliance. Lifestyle considerations don't even register. The room erupted in controlled, professional chaos. Executives were pulling out devices, cross-referencing Derek's projections with their reality. Questions flew from every direction. Why does the implementation roadmap show launch before regulatory approval? How can creative production cost $400,000 when you've allocated $150,000 total for creative development? Are you proposing we target commercial airlines with messaging designed for private aircraft owners? This competitive analysis ranks safety certifications as nice to have, while listing social media engagement as mission critical. Do you understand our industry at all? Derek was drowning, throwing out MBA platitudes about paradigm shifts and disruptive thinking. Each response dug him deeper. Sweat was visible on his forehead despite the aggressive air conditioning. Then Morrison asked the question that changed everything. Mr. Hamilton, have you ever worked on an aerospace account before? The room fell silent. 12 pairs of professional eyes focused on Derek, waiting for an answer that would either save or destroy him. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing emerged. Dr. Chen's voice was surgical in its precision. Ms. Rodriguez, do you have anything to add? Every head turned to me. Derek's face went from pale to ghostly white. I stood slowly, smoothing my navy suit. Yes, Dr. Chen, I do. I opened my laptop, screen already displaying the real quantum strategy, built on accurate data, logical frameworks, and deep understanding of aerospace industry dynamics. The projector was still connected to Derek's computer, but that was about to change. May I? I asked, holding up my HDMI cable. Morrison nodded grimly. Please. As I walked to the front of the room, passing Derek's frozen form, I felt 8 years of background support falling away like old skin. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about competence, integrity, and showing a room full of aerospace executives what professional strategy looked like. The screen flickered. Derek's fantasy disappeared, replaced by reality. My screen came alive with the authentic quantum dynamics strategy, precise, grounded, brilliantly practical. The room seemed to exhale collectively as the first realistic timeline appeared: 18-month implementation with proper regulatory approval phases, stakeholder education periods, and compliance checkpoints. This timeline accounts for FAA certification requirements, I explained, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Aerospace marketing cannot compress regulatory processes. Any strategy suggesting otherwise is built on fundamental misunderstanding of your industry. Dr. Chen leaned forward, studying the screen intently. These phases align with our internal compliance schedule. I clicked to the next slide. Real budget analysis. Your $15 million investment breaks down into 3 primary phases: regulatory positioning, stakeholder education, and market introduction. The previous analysis contained calculation errors that would have resulted in significant cost overruns. How significant? Morrison's question wasn't directed at me, but his eyes were laser-focused on Derek. Approximately $7.4 million over budget, based on the implementation roadmap presented earlier. I advanced to the competitive analysis. Your primary competitive advantage isn't disruption, it's reliability. Aerospace customers adopt new technology when it's proven safer and more efficient than existing solutions. Revolutionary messaging actually increases resistance in this market. Question after question came, and I had answers for each one. Real answers, backed by industry research and regulatory understanding. I showed them the customer journey truth. Aerospace decision-makers required 18 to 24 months of education before adoption, not the 6-month sales cycles Derek's strategy assumed. I demonstrated how their positioning should emphasize evolutionary advancement, not revolutionary disruption. I revealed opportunities they hadn't considered: government incentive programs, partnership potential with established airlines, and gradual fleet integration strategies. 55 minutes later, I'd rebuilt their confidence in both the project and Pinnacle's capabilities. The executives were engaged, asking sophisticated follow-ups, taking detailed notes. This was what aerospace consulting should look like: collaborative, informed, respectful of industry complexities. Finally, Morrison raised his hand. Ms. Rodriguez, one question. If you had this analysis, why were we shown that? He gestured toward Derek, who hadn't moved from his position by the projection screen. I pulled up a new folder on my laptop. Mr. Morrison, I believe in complete transparency. The screen filled with documentation, timestamps, access logs, file histories. These records show the development timeline of both strategic approaches. The flawed versions were preliminary working files, clearly marked, not for distribution. They were accessed without authorization and presented as final deliverables. Dr. Chen was scrolling through her tablet. We received these files last Tuesday. The metadata shows modification attempts, but the original creation dates are intact. Additionally, I continued, displaying the email threads. There's a clear chain of evidence showing how the materials were developed, by whom, and when ownership was claimed. The room fell silent except for the hum of climate control. I'd presented the evidence, like a forensic accountant, letting facts speak louder than accusations. Marcus finally spoke from his position against the wall, his face a study in controlled fury. Maya, why wasn't this addressed internally? I met his gaze steadily. I documented everything through proper channels. However, my concerns about strategic accuracy were consistently redirected to implementation support. I believed the client deserved to see authentic analysis. Morrison stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need a brief recess. Ms. Rodriguez, please remain. Everyone else, his gaze swept over the Pinnacle team, lingering on Derek, please wait outside. As the room emptied, Derek finally found his voice. This is sabotage. She deliberately created. Mr. Hamilton. Morrison cut him off with military precision. I suggest you use this time very carefully. Once we were alone with the quantum team, Morrison's demeanor shifted from CEO to human being. That was quite a risk you took. My responsibility is providing accurate strategic guidance, I replied. I couldn't allow a $15 million project to proceed on fundamentally flawed assumptions. Dr. Chen looked up from her laptop. I've been in aerospace for 20 years. I've seen every type of consultant, the smooth talkers, the technical experts, the theorists. But I've rarely seen someone stake their career on analytical integrity. She looked at Morrison. I want her leading this engagement. Morrison nodded. Ms. Rodriguez, simple question. Can you deliver what you just presented? Yes, but I'll need real authority, not just implementation support. I'll need direct access to your technical teams and regulatory advisors. And I'll need the freedom to build strategy without political interference. Done, Morrison said, extending his hand. Shall we invite the others back? As the Pinnacle team filed back in, Morrison's message was direct and non-negotiable. We're proceeding with the engagement under one condition. Maya Rodriguez leads the project. This is not open for discussion. I watched Derek's world collapse in real time. His face cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally desperate calculation. But there were no moves left. He'd played himself into checkmate with my poison templates. The drive back to Pinnacle's offices was surreal. Derek left immediately after the meeting, escorted by building security to collect his belongings. Marcus stayed behind with the other partners, probably attempting damage control and trying to salvage the agency's reputation. I drove alone through Portland's afternoon traffic, windows down despite the November chill, feeling lighter than I had in years. By the time I reached our building, news had spread. Email travels fast, but office gossip travels faster. The usual elevator small talk was replaced by careful glances and knowing nods. Rebecca from account management actually applauded when I walked past the break room. Marcus called an all-hands meeting at 3:30 p.m. His announcement was brief and professional. Effective immediately, Maya Rodriguez is our new Director of Strategic Development and will be leading the Quantum Dynamics engagement. Derek Hamilton is no longer with Pinnacle Creative Solutions. No elaboration, no questions entertained. Just facts. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a haze of congratulations and sudden visibility. Colleagues who'd walked past my office for years suddenly knew my name. VPs who'd never acknowledged my existence wanted to schedule coffee meetings. The invisibility that had defined my career for 8 years evaporated in a single morning. But the real vindication came in a form I hadn't expected. Throughout that week, other strategists and analysts began approaching me privately. Stories emerged, ideas stolen, credit claimed, work presented by people who couldn't explain the thinking behind it. I wasn't alone in my experience. I was simply the first to document it comprehensively and respond effectively. By Friday, I'd assembled a real team for quantum dynamics. Not political appointments or smooth talkers, but actual strategists who understood aerospace marketing and cared about accuracy. We dove into the project with the enthusiasm that comes from finally being allowed to do your job properly. The strategy sang, the insights flowed, and Quantum was genuinely excited. 2 weeks later, I was deep in regulatory research when an email notification appeared. The sender made me pause. Derek Hamilton. Maya, I think we should talk. What happened was a misunderstanding, and I'd like to clear the air. Coffee. I stared at the message for 30 seconds before typing my response. No. Sometimes the most powerful response is the simplest one. He tried twice more over the following days, longer emails, more apologetic tones, even an attempt to contact me through LinkedIn. I didn't respond. Some professional relationships, once poisoned, should stay toxic. The Quantum Dynamics campaign launched 6 months later, on time and under budget. The regulatory positioning we developed became the industry standard for electric aircraft marketing. The stakeholder education program we created was so effective that Quantum's competitors started copying our approach. Morrison sent a handwritten note to Marcus specifically praising the strategic team's work. It's framed in my new office, the corner one with windows overlooking the river and city. I never did find out exactly what happened to Derek after that day. LinkedIn showed he'd moved to a creative strategy role at a small agency in Phoenix. Then his profile went private. The industry has a long memory for spectacular professional failures, especially ones involving client deception and intellectual property theft. He'd burned through his charm and collided hard with the reality of actual competence. As for me, I published the quantum case study under my own name at the National Marketing Strategy Conference. It won Best Innovation in B2B Strategy. The same conference Derek had submitted a proposal to, featuring my Sabotaged templates. 6 months after that conference room confrontation, I sat in my corner office watching Portland's sunset paint the sky in shades of triumph. 8 years of invisibility, of watching others claim my victories, of being told I lacked executive presence while executives presented my solutions. All it took was someone arrogant enough to steal the wrong templates and confident enough to present them as breakthrough thinking. I opened a new project folder. Q4 Strategic Initiative MR, my initials, right where they belonged. No sabotaged files this time, just a clean, honest strategy waiting to transform another client's business. My phone buzzed with a text from Morrison. Strategic review went perfectly. Glad we have someone who actually understands our industry. I smiled, saved my work, and headed home. The background strategist was gone. In her place stood someone who'd learned the most valuable lesson in corporate consulting: document everything. Trust selectively. And when someone tries to steal your work, make sure what they're stealing is exactly what they deserve. Thank you for listening to my story of workplace justice and professional redemption. I'm curious, what's your experience with credit-stealing colleagues? Have you ever had to document your way out of a professional betrayal? Drop a comment below and share your city or country. I love connecting with listeners from around the world. If this story of strategic revenge resonated with you, please subscribe and share your thoughts. The business world is full of Derek Hamiltons, smooth talkers who mistake confidence for competence and think stealing work is the same as creating value. But here's what I learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't confrontation or complaints to HR. Sometimes it's patience, documentation, and letting someone hang themselves with the rope you've carefully prepared. The templates I created weren't just traps. They were mirrors, reflecting back the fundamental incompetence of someone who thought marketing aerospace technology was the same as selling consumer products. Derek's downfall wasn't my sabotage. It was his inability to recognize that he was completely out of his depth.